Welcome back to another edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. I'm Steve Buchanan, along with my handsome co-host, Julian Edlow. We are getting ready to talk about the Week 14 board, and then a couple special guests on the show. We have a special guest that we'll reveal later on. All right, it was a big name, though, in the basketball world. We'll get to that one. But first and foremost, NFL Network's Cynthia Frelund is going to be joining the show. We'll be breaking down 2 games on the Sunday slate. Let's bring her in and talk about those. Raiders and the Chiefs. I think this is a really interesting game because, people are saying the Chiefs are back. Obviously, now they're facing the Raiders, who have given them issues in the past, right? I'm curious about this one because even though the Chiefs are getting better, it feels like Patrick Mahomes is still ways away. Like his completion percentage over the past 4 or 5 weeks or so, he's hardly cracking over 50%. He's been consistently under 60%. This is definitely a team that you can throw against, but the Chiefs are massive favorites this week. And I'm always weary about, looking at the Chiefs and their massive favorites here because that's not been a strong point for them at all. So what do you kind of lean on this one? This is one of the earlier games this week, on Sunday afternoon.
So first off, we always hear about like Andy Reid coming off a bye. The other thing that's like almost as high probability as Andy Reid coming off a bye is the Chiefs getting huge wins at home, if you know what I mean. Because like that stuff doesn't happen when they're favored by a lot, especially at home. It just doesn't happen for them. I don't know. They just don't win by more than that number. If you're figuring out what I'm saying here. So look, ultimately, I think that this is it's the number one pressure rate defensive front, and they have been all season long. The Raiders, that is, and they've been problematic for the Chiefs, who we've seen second most drops. I feel like that's the biggest media story about the Chiefs right now. All the drops. But not only they have drops, but they had some weird, like unlucky stuff. Like try to recreate that Asante Samuel's interception. Like go ahead. Like we'll give you 5 billion chances. Good luck recreating that. So they've also had some unlucky things happen. So now you're seeing higher probability things happen. Last week, Darrell Williams had like 70 receiving yards, led the team. That was kind of boring to watch, but it was effective. So the point is like, I don't know if Patrick Mahomes needs to be like who we expect him to be come January quite yet, right? Like, I think they need to just stay efficient and effective. They need to figure out their O-line was rebuilt this offseason to protect the run. And that it was not necessarily like that deep passing, like Patrick Mahomes throws on the run. So they were like, well, maybe if we create a good run blocking offensive line, that we can use the run to set up even more favorable passing situations. It didn't start off working like that, but it has since started to come together. So let the run develop. This is not sexy football. Patrick Mahomes throwing like literally, what was he in the Super Bowl? Like he was horizontal throwing the ball.
Yes,
like,
right.
Congratulations, buddy. Like you're incredible. But like, this is more one of those games where they need to like do the higher probability things. Like the defense needs to really just stop those big plays, like just stop them and show us that they have taken the massive step forward that they expect from that Spags defense, and then do boring stuff on offense. Not sexy moment. I understand. Like it's not fun for, when you talk about, oh, what's the sexiest part of football? Like I am naming the opposite of that, but do those things because those get you wins.
So quick follow-up on that. Do you think that the offensive line issue it has been more of what's contributing, or is the league finally starting to figure him out, or is it kind of a combination of both?
It's both. And the other thing is, when Patrick Mahomes first came on the scene, he was different. He was not like the other quarterbacks, right? Like, remember, he was coming out of college. Supply and demand in NFL, you only can get what's coming out of college. The athletes coming out of college create what's in the NFL. And Patrick and Andy Reid and Mike Kafka and Eric Bieniemy were first to figure out this, throwing on the run type of thing. We've since seen Josh Allen throws on the run really well too. Like all of these things are kind of changing, but that's what's coming out of college. So I don't necessarily know that it's a little bit of both, because there's a lot more film of Patrick Mahomes and people treat it like their Super Bowl because he is that special and he is worth treating it like that. And number two, that's a more quarterbacks now have profiles that are a bit more similar to the Patrick Mahomes style than they were a few years ago when we had more pocket passers or rushers. You didn't have these guys who were like, well, what's he going to do? Like, you either had like, it used to be very hard to go from Tom Brady to Lamar Jackson, right? Well, now you've got like, then you added this like Patrick Mahomes type of style. And it's like, well, what's that? So, but now there's more truly hybrid players. So they're just defenses are now seeing this more often. And they saw it in college too.
I want to ask you about both of these teams that are playing, but maybe a little bit more of their outlook for the future, because I think most people feel that the Chiefs are going to win this game at home.
Yeah.
Whether it's a blowout or not,
Right.
We'll find out on Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, I love the way that you just put the offensive line. Like my dad is staying with me this week at my house. Dude knows nothing about football. It's remarkable how embarrassing some of his questions are. But he asked me, like, why did Patrick Mahomes have this start to the season that he had? And I was like, well, if I had to guess, remember in the Super Bowl how they scored 9 points and he was running all over the place? Well, they have a complete new offensive line. He started poorly. They're starting to figure it out. So in your mind, is this just going steadier and steadier for the Chiefs? Are they going to be peaking in terms of Mahomes' protection when we do get to the postseason and they want to be at their best throwing the ball, even though you said they built this to set up the run?
I'm going to be honest with you. The next 2 weeks, we're going to see that because they've got the Raiders this week, and then they've got the Chargers on Thursday Night Football next week. So
short turnaround on the road.
Short turnaround on the road. 2 defensive fronts that can really bring the heat. Now, the Raiders don't back it up as well. Like they're good up front, but then they can give up the big play, right? It's just a different style. But also, they play each other a lot. So they have familiarity with these teams, and these divisional tilts do teach you a lot, right? Like the Denver game was boring, but it was a harder game than it might have been if it were not 2 teams that face each other so often. So this kind of like this stretch right here, this is whether or not the Chiefs are legit or if they swung and they missed. Because, remember they bring in Melvin Ingram like not that long ago. I don't remember exactly which week, but before the trade deadline. And he seemed to make a big difference on their defense too. So are these complementary aspects, are they enough to get you over that hurdle? Because the Chiefs had a really punishing schedule. And it's not quite done yet. They still got a few bangers left. They're not just sitting there like some other teams just skating with like the Jags and the Texans left,
And real quick, just tell me who the Raiders are, because the team that I cannot figure out the most in the NFL is the Raiders. And they are a team that I fade all the time, whether it be for something season-long related or on a weekly basis. And whatever I think they're going to do, whenever I think they're going to zig, they zag. I have no idea what they are. They're 6-6, which seems perfect. They're 500 at the Chiefs this week, at the Browns the next week, hosting the Broncos, at the Colts, hosting the Chargers. Tough finish. Like, where does this team wind up? There's no way this team ends up over 500.
Yeah, no, I think that so there's interior offensive line will punish you eventually. And they have a crappy interior offensive line. And they haven't gotten super punished for it yet. However, now injuries are starting to add up. And Drake, and we've been in and out. Josh Jacobs has been in and out of the lineup, and Kenyon Drake obviously now not in the lineup anymore. So Derek Carr cannot overcome that alone. To me, they're the perfect team to be in Vegas because they are literally high risk, high reward. They're a tech stock, they're crypto, they're any analogy you want to make to something volatile. That's what they are. Because they're good in like last year, it was perfect. I have to double check ahead of this. Like 3rd and 15 plus, they were the best in the league. 3rd and under 6, the worst in the league. Exactly right. Don't do the things that are normal. Well, do the things that are really high risk. You're the best at that. Okay. Makes perfect sense. But it also kind of works on their defense too. Either they clobber you up front and just smash you in the mouth and you can't do anything, or they're giving you up the big play. And even though their pressure schemes could work, they're just not. Right. So to me, they're kind of the perfect team to be in Vegas because they're just so volatile and risky. Their profile changes kind of a lot, right? Like it looked like completely different team against the Cowboys, and then whatever it was fielded against Washington. Like it's just totally, the things that works in one don't work in the other, and they don't seem to have any consistency around what gets them back to good once things start going bad. And that's the measure of a good team, right? A good team, once things starts going awry, can right the ship and make the necessary adjustments. I don't think this team adjusts very well, but I will say, I have to give Casey Hayward a little credit there. I mean to the back end of their defense, but when they don't target Casey Hayward, you're fine.
All right, so finally, I want to wrap up with probably the game that's going to have the most eyes on it this week. The Bills at the Buccaneers. We don't have to go into what happened in the Patriots game. It's been talked about more than enough, but I think it's interesting. Go ahead, Julian. Go ahead.
What happened in the Patriots game has so much to do with where they are moving forward, but we'll get there. Finish your question.
Well, this is why I brought that up, because the Patriots obviously annihilated them on the ground, but now they're facing the team that throws 67% of the time on their offensive play calls, which is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That leads the league. They do it the most in the league. How does that, if at all, how do the Buccaneers handle that? Because you can see that you can beat the Bills on the ground. We've seen it twice now. They've given up a ton on the ground, but the Buccaneers just simply don't do that. They're still tough through the air. So do you think that factors into their strategy going into this game? And who do you like to win this one? Because this is going to be a close one, I think.
Well, unfortunately and look, I did preseason with the Bills and I really enjoyed the Mafia. They were very like a lovely group. Like I had so much fun with them. But what I saw in that last game that's like a little more complex than just saying like they can be beat on the ground is the disguise in formations with heavy personnel, meaning with a tight end or bringing in an extra offensive lineman, they were able to disguise the look such that the Bills, who by the way are still adapting to figuring out what to do without Tre'Davious White, who is their best defensive player, and now he's gone, and obviously is a corner, which you would think like in the passing game would be, but is also recognizing in the run game. Do we keep those? They have great safeties. They had one great corner. Now it's just the good safety. So it's going to be interesting to see, are you giving two high looks, single high looks? What are you keeping back there as the home run stopper? Because when they didn't do that, you saw the Damian Harris situation happen. So it's really the disguised formations pre-snap that tricked them. And that's where the Colts also had a really interesting, because heavy sets, multiple, like things that don't look like they're going to be a run, or if they could be a pass, or they could be play action. They were trying to make sure that Mac Jones wasn't going to hit him with the play action. It seemed like what they were playing there was a type of defense that was structured to say, we trust our run game, which maybe they shouldn't have, but whatever. But we're not going to let Mac Jones beat us with play action. We're not going to let Carson Wentz beat us with play action. Well, we're going to let Jonathan Taylor score 6 million touchdowns and, they won't get run over. But it felt like there was no, like I said, that adapting thing. They do have kind of some young pieces on their defense. Like, they're two of their pass rushers, Gregory Rousseau and, Carlos Basham, like they're rookies. So there's some older and newer, and they've what are the looks? How are they making these looks happen for them? So I'm curious to see Tom Brady. That's a bad matchup because ahead of the snap, Tom Brady can move over, that big guy Gronk. Like, is he a lineman in this one, or is he going to be, actually a tight end? They've got good, heavy personnel looks, even if they aren't runs, right? So I know they don't explicitly run, but it's the pre-snap look that's going to be the trick that the Bills need to solve. And if the Bills want to win this game, they got to figure out second down. Second down, they have been crap. And last year, that's a huge difference. Like their passing situation on second down specifically, this year it feels like defenses know what they're going to do. Maybe they need to mix it up a little bit, or if I were advising them, I would tell them to use pre-snap motion on first and second down so no one knows what the hell they're doing, because they can't get a consistent run. So now they're constantly in 2nd and 10, which is not good for them.
So
preach. I'm gonna get off my soapbox now.
Like the way that the NFL works, this is, the Bills had the big win against the Chiefs earlier in the year. They're the team to beat in the AFC. The perception is that they're a very good team. They lose an embarrassing game on Monday Night Football. This is supposed to be a bounce back spot. But like you said, I think Monday night just crippled them in some ways. The McDermott comments, clearly Belichick and the Patriots were in their head a little bit. And now the poor Bills, who the division's supposed to be theirs for the next 10 years after Brady leaves, they have a great year last year. They get embarrassed by Belichick on Monday Night Football. And now who's up next? Go see Tom Brady in Tampa. They can't get away from Belichick and Brady still, which is kind of hilarious. But here we are. And you think that the Bills, they should be able to throw. Tampa's secondary, not great. The matchup works for the Bills there. I just think that Monday night damaged them kind of long-term for the season in my mind. This is more of a, there's no numbers for this, but what is your gut feel on the Bills moving forward after what happened Monday night and what you just said is a bad matchup for them that they're getting sent into on Sunday?
I will say that the funny part about the Bills and those comments, actually, I kind of took them the other way, meaning usually I had to interview Sean McDermott and he gives you nothing. I literally got to the point, it was preseason. I was like, what do you like better? Like, the barbecue wing sauce or the spicy barbecue? Like, it's just crazy. Like, like he gives you nothing. The fact
and he didn't answer that question either, probably.
He was just like, I like them both. I'm like, God, but, it's like, like but I love that because he's like such a consummate professional. But like, it's the hard part there is that like, I think showing a little bit of emotion, like that could actually probably work in their favor, because maybe that's like the type of thing where like, because I will tell you, like, they're a very flat organization. Like when you're around them, like the owner down to like the newest PA, like, which is a production assistant, right? In entry level position, they're all hanging out together. They're all very family. They're very open. They have good conversations. They like, they treat people very well there. Like players you don't hear players being like, the coaches hate us and whatever. They do a nice job of like coming together. And the fact that he was like spicy enough to say that publicly, maybe that lit a fire under some of their butts. Sure. To like, it could have worked the other way. Like, obviously, media, we don't like when you can't let Bill Belichick live in your head, because like, good luck, he's never getting out. So like, we take it one way, but I'm like, well, maybe it's actually going to work the opposite way to like focus these guys in. Because that really the problem, that like the worst loss was the Jags. Like, what the heck was that? Right. So that was the type of thing where you're like, oh, okay, now we got to like reel it in here, because their season isn't over. They still got another matchup left with the Patriots. That was a weird game for sure. Like this, the between not just the weather, but also the strategy and game plan. Like, like when you're playing your sibling for too long, like rock, paper, scissors, and they always pick the same one. And they're like, someday they got to change. Like, I am not going to be the one to put paper when they go scissors. Fine. Like, that kind of thing. I think they were just a little too, overthinking it. So maybe like they can get in a groove, have fun. Like, I don't think Tom Brady and, obviously Todd Bowles are protecting this defense. Like that's not like a prime matchup to get right, but they still have some favorable matchups left on their calendar to help them out. But it will come down to that game. It's likely going to come down to that next matchup with the Pats for kind of all the marbles for the Bills.
All right. That was some excellent analysis. Cynthia, thank you so much for coming on. At C Frelund on Twitter. Make sure to get at her. All this type of analysis all the time. Not just on here, on NFL Network.
This girl won't shut up.
She's great. She's great. And it's everywhere on NFL Network. Get at her on Twitter, wherever you do your social media. She's on there too. She'll break it down for you, but appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much. We'll definitely have you on again. We appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Bye. Nice to meet you. Have a great day.
All right, so up next, Julian Edlow went to the DraftKings Sportsbook opening at Foxwoods Resort Casino.
I did.
And he was with a special guest. Kendrick Perkins joined the show. We're going to get to that when we come back next.
What is going on, everybody? Julian Edlow here for the Unreasonable Odds podcast, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. And if you are watching us on YouTube rather than listening to us, you see that the man to my left, Kendrick Perkins, NBA analyst, former Boston Celtic, former NBA champion. We are here for the grand opening of the DraftKings Sportsbook at the Foxwoods Resort and Casino. Big Perk, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Look, I'm so excited right now. You don't understand this, the gaming, casino, the bar, restaurants, food. You could tell I put on a retirement 60. It's just good for the soul, man. You don't understand. It's good for the soul. I'm happy to be here.
It is good for the soul, and one thing that is good for my soul is betting on sports, and that's what we can do here at the DraftKings Sportsbook. You are going to be placing the ceremonial first bet, the first wager at the grand opening of this casino. Before we went on, you told me your bet. I love your bet because I'm a big Boston Celtics fan. Let's hear what you're going with here.
You know what? I'm a Bill Homer for the right reasons. I know that when you're in the gaming system and you're betting, you can't bet with your heart all the time. So I'm betting with my mind and my heart. And I'm taking the Boston Celtics tonight with the money line for the full game against the Los Angeles Clippers. And I know it's a back-to-back, but it's not your typical back-to-back. They didn't have to travel. They just went straight to their hotel. They're going to be fresh. They're going to be ready to go. And by the way, the way that the Clippers have been playing lately, they can't stop a nosebleed, okay?
Bounce back spot for the C's. Yeah. I agree. Down here for the Clippers. I'm on board. I'm with you. All right. So talking about sports betting a little bit more, is have you bet on any on sports in the past? Are you when you're going through NBA, when you're in legal states and whatnot?
You know what? I have. I'm more of an NFL guy than the NBA guy. And I'm more of a first half guy. See, I like to get mine out.
I've heard you say this before on Daily Wager. So go ahead, explain that to us.
Absolutely. I'm more of a first half guy. One is because the line basically at some points get cut in half. Mm-hmm. So, and I like to see, especially in the NFL, teams like to strike first. So when I see something that I call a deadbolt lock, like, maybe Tampa Bay playing the Falcons or New England playing anybody the way that they're playing right now. The Patriots are a lock every single week, but I like to get mine out the way fast. I don't want to wait the entire game.
You sound like you would be a great first touchdown bettor, is what you need to get into. That is a quick strike right there. All right, let's talk about the NBA season a little bit here. A lot of parity in the NBA right now. Before it was, hey, Golden State's going to win it. Hey, LeBron's going to win it, and Miami. Now there are a lot of teams that can potentially win the NBA championship. Ever since Kawhi and Toronto stole that one, it's kind of been more open. What are your thoughts on who's going to win the title? Early thoughts, obviously, in the NBA so far this season.
Well, you know what? The NBA is back to a great place, right? Where it's equal throughout. The Eastern Conference is strong again. The Western Conference has always been strong. But when you look at teams like the Warriors, when you look at teams like the Utah Jazz, even the Phoenix Suns, the Milwaukee Bucks, it's up for grabs. And I always say this, you don't win championships in December or January. You win championships in June. So as being a former champion, a guy that has been through those battles, you want to be playing your best basketball in April and May, right? And so when I look at teams that are constructed for the long haul, I really don't have a favorite. I really don't. Because
I love it.
But because I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know what? And I'm not being a homer. If the Celtics could get their act together, if Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum could play well together at the same time, I think they have a fighting chance. I mean, it'd be tough to get through Milwaukee. I think they could beat the Brooklyn Nets, especially without Kyrie Irving. Should I be saying his name around this area?
You can say his name. I'm a Celtics season ticket holder. I don't love the guy.
I know how y'all feel about him. But, this is the fun part about the NBA is that people were ready to crown the Lakers early, because they have potentially 6 future Hall of Famers. And as you can see, nobody is scared of nobody. So I'm just looking forward to see who is playing the best basketball in April.
All right, you mentioned the Warriors. The Warriors seem to be back, and they don't even have Klay Thompson on the floor yet. He's going to be on the floor. Number 2 pick of last year's draft, James Wiseman, not even on the floor yet. He's going to be on the floor. I want to talk MVP with you for a minute because Steph is, I don't want to say carrying that team, but he's doing a lot right now. He is the odds-on favorite to win the MVP award right now. Is that where, if I'm saying here's a free bet for you, you got to bet MVP, is it Steph Curry or are you going elsewhere?
I'm going with Steph Curry. But it's not a deadbolt lock. Okay, because he do have a lot of other players that's on his heels like a pair of socks. You got Kevin Durant, who's leading the league in scoring. Brooklyn is at the top of the Eastern Conference. No Kyrie Irving, and he's still carrying their team on both ends of the floor. But what Steph is doing right now, to say that he's arguably having his best season of his career, I would have to take that bet. I'm not calling it a dead.
And that says somebody that has already won a unanimous MVP with the vote.
Yeah, but listen to me, Jay. Look, I'm not saying that I love it. I like it. See, a deadbolt lock for me is something that I love. But I will say right now he's the front runner.
All right. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about my favorite team of all time while I have you here, that being the 2008 Boston Celtics. You bring in Kevin Garnett, changes the whole culture of the team. We were just talking about the MVP award. In my personal opinion, the biggest MVP snub of all time that I've ever seen is Kevin Garnett in 2008. From what he brought in, you were there before. That season before was ugly. I watched all the games. What he brought in terms of culture, talk to me about that, because Kevin Garnett, and conveniently enough, somehow, that was Kobe's only MVP year in 2008. That award was Kevin Garnett's. Tell me why I am right.
You are right. And here's the thing about the MVP, right? Every single year, it seemed like the narrative change, or they move the goalposts on why this guy's the MVP and this guy didn't win the MVP. I always go back and look at the Steve Nash and Phoenix situation. You know, he was averaging around 16 points and 11 assists, but because they won 60-plus games, because they had the best record in the league, he won the MVP. Well, you go back to what Kevin Garnett bought. I mean, he was a 20-10 guy and 5 assists, Defensive Player of the Year. And I just felt like what he did on both ends of the floor, you know, his numbers probably wasn't better than Kobe's for scoring-wise, but I felt like his impact on winning and what he meant. Because to me, an MVP is you take this guy off this team, and what would this team be? So, I mean, I think that pretty much answers your question. I'm not being a homer because Kevin Garnett is a brother of mine, and I'm not being a homer because you're sitting up here being one of my new favorite best friends. I'm just keeping it real.
I could not agree with you more. Biggest MVP snub that I have ever seen. All right. I want to, I'm taking this as a personal time for me because I have somebody of the '08 Celtics with me, my favorite team of all time. Tell me something about that championship team that I don't know. I know a lot about this team. I watched all the games. I've seen all the interviews. Tell me something that I don't know about the 2008 Celtics.
You know what? I'm going to take you outside the basketball court. Our plane rides were epic. They were a movie.
I heard about the arm wrestling.
Yeah, the arm wrestling, but did you hear about, the big boom box that we bought on, blasting the music? Did you hear about the card games? Did you hear about – so, at one point we had, it was an opportunity for season ticket holders to fly on road trips with us. And so Doc Rivers and Whit Grosbeck and Danny Ainge, they had to prep the season ticket holders and say, you know what, look, this plane ride is going to be experienced at some.
Wild.
Yeah, it's going to be really wild. Y'all have to understand that guys are going to be on here. They may take their shirts off because it get heated on here. It's going to be a lot of rap music. It's going to be a lot of things that probably make you feel uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, they are great guys. Okay, we just had to warn them.
All right, fair enough. '08 Boston Celtics, one of the first wagers that I placed. I was in college. I was very poor. $25 on the '08 Celtics to win it all. I knew that you guys were going to come through for me, so I thank you very much.
At the right time,
before the season. Well, this was a long time ago. So legal, you had to be only one place was legal, so I had to get it there.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah. But I mean, you guys came through for me. All right, one more about Kevin Garnett. This is my last Celtics nerd question. Kevin Garnett doesn't hurt his knee. You win 3 straight championships. I'm 100% convinced. And if you don't hurt your knee, you probably win that Game 7 in L.A.
You're absolutely right, because one thing we both know, and these are facts, is that when our starting 5 was healthy, we never lost the playoffs. There you go.
Heard it a million times. Yeah. A lot of times from you, too.
And you go continue to hear it from me.
We will continue to hear it from Kendrick Perkins. Perk, thank you so much for joining us on the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Thank you so much for being here at the grand opening of the DraftKings Sportsbook here at Foxwoods Resort Casino. We're going to have a pretty fun day here, I think, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's only right.
All right, go Celtics. Hopefully they beat the Clippers tonight. And Perk starts 1-0 here at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Perk, thanks so much for joining us here on Unreasonable Odds.
All right. Thank you to Kendrick Perkins for joining me at the grand opening of the DraftKings Sportsbook over at Foxwoods. Thank you to me for conducting an amazing interview. And thanks to Steve for staying home and doing nothing. Nothing new there. So, all right, let's get back to NFL though, after a little bit of NBA talk there. Although Perk did say he loves betting the NFL. Let's look at Thursday night football first. I know it's kind of a gross game. Steelers at Vikings. Vikings are 3 or 3.5 point favorites. We're moving around a little. Yep. -3, -125 as we record. 3-point home favorites. I don't know. The Steelers beat the Ravens last week. The Vikings lost to the Lions last week. They're at home. I'll buy low. If you told me here's $100, you have to bet this game, I would buy low on the Vikings and bet them, but I'm not betting this game.
Yeah, this is a pretty ugly game. I feel like we say this during all the primetime games because that's just how the scheduling has been gone. The shocking thing here is that,
how the scheduling has been gone.
Yeah, it's been terrible. But the shocking thing here is that it's looking like Dalvin Cook's going to play in this game, which is fine because I cannot imagine they're giving him a normal workload, especially when Alexander Mattison, when he's been handling the normal workload, he's been great. Like he's probably one of the best handcuffs in the NFL when it comes to your top guy goes down. Well, now you have Alexander Mattison come in and he almost performs just as well as Dalvin Cook. So I do actually like, in terms of props though, that if Dalvin Cook is in this game, I'm probably taking the under on almost everything. I cannot imagine that he's going to be out there for more than maybe a handful of snaps. And when he is out there, is he going to be more than a decoy at this point? Because, obviously then the defense is focusing on Cook. That can open up something for Justin Jefferson downfield. That's been the guy that they go to. No Adam Thielen in this game too as well. So there's something to take a look at as well. But, when it comes to betting something in this game, I'll end up having something because football's on. So I got to have something on it. You got to be watching it anyways. That's just the type of person we are, people we are. But I'm probably going to end up taking the unders on Dalvin Cook's props when those end up coming out, unless just something egregious, like, if they're next to nothing. But I would imagine that if he's active, you're going to see a fairly normal line for him. So I'd be more inclined to take the under on his props for tonight.
All right. So I happen to think that the Steelers will be draped all over Justin Jefferson, whose receiving prop is set at 92.5. He's coming off 11 receptions, 14 targets. Had a big game against the Lions. But I'm not taking unders on him. I just want to focus on somewhere else to bet props with a lot of focus on Jefferson and no Thielen, like you mentioned. So KJ Osborne is a guy, his receiving prop set at 41.5. I think he's kind of intriguing. I'm more intrigued by Tyler Conklin, the tight end, 39.5. He caught 5 of 7 targets last week. Good matchup against the Steelers. So that's kind of where I'm looking. But if we go to the touchdown scores, Tyler Conklin is plus 225 anytime. I don't mind that at all. I think he probably gets in there. And the Pittsburgh's run defense is pretty decent, potentially keeps whatever combination of running backs we do see from Minnesota out of there. Look for the tight end in the red zone. Tyler Conklin, anytime touchdown, plus 225 feels like pretty good odds to me.
All right, let's switch to games that we actually do like. We're going to take a look at the Sunday board. Obviously, we talked to Cynthia about a couple of good games this week with the Raiders and Chiefs, and then the Bills and Buccaneers. I just want to bring up, because I talked about this on Tuesday, and it switched rather dramatically. Bengals, once upon a time, were favorites against the 49ers. Now it is switched. They are 2-point home underdogs against the 49ers. Getting up to some interesting teaser territory there for the Bengals now. You can get them at +8 at this point, but I'm still going to ride or die with them this week. What I saw from the 49ers last week was just so incredibly bad. Now, I know they might be getting Deebo Samuel back this week. That's obviously a big piece there, but Bengals been a good team on the ground. They've been using Samuel on the ground. They just got to stop him through the air. Other than that, though, and George Kittle, there's really nothing that feels imposing for this Bengals team in a bounce back spot, against crumbling against the Chargers last week. And I brought it up too last week. They almost retook the lead after being down 24-0. They came back and scored 23 unanswered points. But then they just kind of fell apart at the end there against the Chargers, who've been, kind of like the Raiders. You can't figure out this Chargers team at all. I think I know who the Bengals are, and I think they should win this game outright against the 49ers. So now you can get them at +105 on the money line if you want to do that. Obviously, -110 with the points, +2, but I'm still going with the Bengals. That movement doesn't sway me here.
Yeah, this is the Julian Edlow loser bowl. My 2 bets on Sunday were Bengals and Niners, both lost. And here we are. I'm not going to bet this one, a matchup of my losers from last week.
Well, someone will win this time.
Huh?
Someone will win this time.
Someone is going to win this time. That's the good news. The bad news is I don't know who it's going to be. So I'm not going to bet the game.
Yeah.
It is interesting getting the Bengals as home dogs, but I think that sharp money that obviously came in on the 49ers is telling. They're also in a bounce back spot after that gross game against Seattle. So I'm out on this one. The only thing I've bet on Sunday still remains what I gave out on Tuesday's podcast. I bet the Browns as a pick 'em. I gave them out on the podcast, gave them out on Twitter as -140 money line, -130 money line favorites. They're now -3 even money, -145 money line. Laying 2.5 is about the most I would do. -140, -2.5 is about as far as I would go. I think we'll see those numbers again. It's bouncing around a little bit, but I love the spot for the Browns. Your last game was 2 weeks ago. You lost 16-10 to the Ravens, who have lost since then to Pittsburgh at home, gotten dinged up, specifically losing yet another corner. They're now down to their top 2 corners for the rest of the year. They're dinged up. Lamar Jackson's not playing well. Baltimore's focus was on another game, while the Browns' focus was just to go home and take 2 weeks to prepare for a bounce-back revenge home game against a divisional opponent. It's all there for the Browns. The only thing is, when you say you're betting the Browns, people tell you the Browns stink. I'm betting a spot, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if this gets up to 3.5, I think I'd have to side with the Ravens at this point, right? Like it's trending that way potentially. We could get 3.5 maybe by Sunday. This game's just moving a lot, and
at 3.5, at 3.5, it's just no bet for me. It's got to be 2.5 or lower for me to play. There's too much movement in this game for two teams that have, kind of stunk lately. That's the worry for me. That's the worry for me. So, I'm proud of you for making a stand on a gross game like this, but week 14, I guess could be described as gross overall, right? Because there's nothing really that jumps out. You're like, oh, totally got to take this one. Other than, for me, I'm still okay with taking the Bucks. It's at up to 3.5, bouncing around between 3 and 3.5 here, but it's even money 3.5. So you can get the 3 -120 at this stage. Which I would still do.
Yep.
So that's the game I was going to go to next. I was going to say it's Browns for me. If I bet anything else Sunday, anything in the late window, it's going to be Tampa. This is supposed to be where Buffalo bounces back, but it's a game we just talked about with Cynthia in the first block of the show. She told us why the matchup favors Tampa. And I also think this could just be, I know you're supposed to bounce back after a loss. I think this could be a hangover spot off of a loss with how embarrassing it was to the Patriots, and that now you go on the road on a short week and you go from Belichick to Brady, which again, I just think is hilarious that the Bills are supposed to be these AFC favorites. And here we are late in the season. They're going to get their butts kicked by Brady and Belichick again to be a fringe wild card team. After going to the AFC championship game a year ago. I think Tampa's going to show up in this game. I'm very close to betting Tampa, which means I probably won't have the strength to stay away from it by the time this game kicks off in, over 72 hours from the time we're talking about it right now.
And here's the interesting thing too. If the Bills do end up losing this game, the Dolphins are on a bye. The Dolphins are right there. Yeah. They're right there. And who do they have in week 15? The Jets at home. That's talking about the Dolphins. And the Bills have the Panthers. So there's probably most likely going to be winning that game against the Panthers. But, just something to think about. Just something to think about.
Really quick, because the Browns are the bet I'm going to give out in my NFL Best Bets article. I want to try and give more. Bills under 10.5 wins is -120 on DraftKings Sportsbook. If they lose to the Bucks and Patriots, you cash it.
Yep.
If they lose one of those games and go finish 4-1, you lose it. They have to finish 4-1 to lose. The Bills aren't an 800 team.
Yep.
Now they host the Panthers, host the Falcons, host the Jets in the 3 other games.
Yep.
They'll be favored in all of those by a wide margin and should win them. But let's say if they do happen to split with the Bucks and Patriots, which are both road games, they still could slip up one of those. This team lost to the Jaguars. There's still hope to slip up. Right. I think that the Bills under 10.5 is a really good bet. And the other one is the Ravens. Plus money on the Ravens under 10.5. Now they're an 8-win team currently.
Yeah, I was going to say,
go 2 and 3 to win, which is more difficult. But I've told you what I think about the Browns game this weekend.
Yep.
I think they lose on the road. Listen to the rest of the schedule. Host Packers, at Bengals, host Rams, host Steelers.
Yikes.
They're all coin flip games at best for the Ravens, but probably underdogs in all of them. But the Steelers, maybe a closer point spread against the Bengals, even though it's on the road. I think they're going 2-3 at best.
Yeah.
And going under 10.5.
And just real quick too, back to the Bills. They're 9.5 point favorites against the Panthers next week. Dolphins are 7-point favorites against the Jets. That's what the lines are currently over on DraftKings Sportsbook. That Ravens game, they're 2-point underdogs at home against the Packers. So those are the early looks at those ones right now over on DraftKings Sportsbook. You can check those out. Obviously, we talk about getting, trying to get the best line value. Sometimes this is the time to do that too. You can take a look at some of those lines that are upcoming for this week. Anything else you want to touch on? I think there's a college football play you want to give up before we wrap up here.
Basketball.
Okay.
Thursday night, hardwood. What is going on? Why was Purdue -12 against Rutgers? They should be -20 against Rutgers, but I'm not betting the spread because it feels a little trappy. Purdue scores like 93, 94 points per game. They have scored over 75.5, over 76.5 points in every game they've played this season. Their team total at Rutgers is 70. I bet it at 75.5. It looks like it's since moved up to 76.5. Over. Rutgers just gave up 86 to Illinois. They're a slow-paced team. That's why this number is where it is. They gave up 86 to Illinois. They gave up 85 to UMass. And you're telling me that Purdue, the best offensive team in the country by every metric, is not going to get to if they cash this bet at 76 points, it would be their season low and they would cash their team total over tonight. Give me the first half over 36.5. Give me the full game over 75.5 for Purdue. Team total 76.5 is fine if you didn't get the Twitter play earlier. Purdue's going to win this game 88-64.
Okay.
There you go.
Why did you do that?
Why did I do what?
Why did you give an actual score? Is that necessary?
Because if it's right, I can brag about it.
What are the chances of being right?
High.
I got an idea. You can bet exact scores, can't you? Put it in.
No, I'm probably not going to do that, but I am going to bet over 75.5 team total for Purdue. That's happening. 7 p.m. Eastern tip. So hopefully you're listening to us early when this gets turned around. And I love that bet in college basketball tonight.
There you go. Wrap it. We're done. Oh, he's got to take a drink first.
I have to wrap. Jeez,
Yes.
I already went on the road yesterday to do an interview for the show, making me do all the heavy lifting. Thank you to our guest, Cynthia Frelund. Thank you to our guest, Cynthia Frelund, before I was so rudely interrupted, from NFL Network. Give her the follow on Twitter. Give us the follow on Twitter at Buchanan24, at Julian Edlow, and of course at Unreasonable Odd, because as we keep telling you every week, we are going to have some Christmas gifts for the loyal listeners of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. So stay tuned to find out what those are. Good luck with your week. 14 plays. You'll be flush with cash from Purdue team total over to do as you please with. And we will talk to you guys next week on Tuesday.